The Georgia game was an enigma. That's on Kirby Smart. We know Georgia is one of the best two or three teams in the nation, and they may be the best, but they are never going to be able to prove it. Alabama was fortunate to be able to get to the college football playoff. That's what Paul Finebaum had to say a day after Alabama loses to Michigan on the final play of the game in the college football playoff semifinals at the Rose Bowl game. So I agree with everything Paul just said right there, and you know, stick with me here as I go through this because this might be a longer video than usual. But you know, Georgia, the complaint, if you want to call it that, about Kirby is, I don't think there's much in the way of complaining. But if you're going to complain, the the thing that comes to my mind immediately is, he's lost 2 or 3 games to Alabama when he's had the better team, and I think that is concerning. I don't think that that's always concerning, but I think that is concerning in this case because Alabama plays in your league. I mean, if we're talking about Ohio State or Michigan or Wisconsin or UTEP, it'd be a different conversation because you don't play them all the time. Alabama and Georgia are going to see each other next year in the regular season. They probably will see each other in Atlanta. I don't know about that. Let's see how that shakes loose as we go through this new gauntlet of the SEC. But Georgia is not going to be able to avoid Alabama any more than Alabama is going to be able to avoid the Dogs. I think the criticism from me for both of these teams right now or programs, Georgia did have the best team in the country, and some people are kind of dancing around that. Sometimes Paul does, sometimes he doesn't. He was dancing around a little bit here, and then he won the national championship. So that's a problem. That's not. I don't know if that's worse or better than Alabama had an opportunity to steal a national championship and they didn't do it because this is not a season in 2023 that we're talking about all-time teams. We have seen that lately. 19, 20, 21, 22. These are all going to be considered all-time teams. The winner of this national championship is not going to go down like that. Georgia a season ago beat the brains off of everybody except Missouri and Ohio State. They won the national championship by a bowl record at that time. They broke it this year. They were 15-0, only the third team in history to do that. The 21 team was probably the greatest defense in the SEC's history, perhaps college football. 2020 Alabama, it's hard to describe them without saying excellence. 2019 LSU was probably the greatest offense in college football history. So no one's going to talk. Michigan may go down as the most mischievous national champion ever, which is, really saying something considering college football's history. But if Washington wins, it'll be an afterthought. I don't mean that in a bad way, but they're not a national brand. And as annoying as it probably is to Oregon, UW's there right now and they can win it. But I think to me, this was not a failed season for Georgia. Frankly, they should be ranked in front of Texas when this thing ends up. They probably won't be, which is stupid, but whatever. It doesn't matter if you're 4 or you're 5. You're not number 1 these days. Nothing seems to matter. So, but you can't. You have to go do it. And Texas is about to find that out. They're about to find that out in a real big way because they're not going to be playing Oklahoma State in the SEC championship game. Their toughest game is no longer going to be Oklahoma every year. I don't think so. It's just a different life in this league. And my brother-in-law and I were talking. He's a Clemson guy. And there's such sensitivity when you're not in the league about the SEC. And, Texas and Oklahoma had a big thing about the SEC for a long time. And now they're joining it. Why? Money? I don't, because they see the future and they know what it is. Hey, check this out. You want to see something nice? This is our buddies at EcoPoly. This is the River's Edge Adirondack chair. Now listen, I sit in these all the time. This one's in red and black. These are abnormally comfortable. I've got a cushion on mine. You can get cushions for these. For our triggered Alabama fans who are joining us, you can just go with the crimson and white. It's okay. I know you're here watching, fuming and all that stuff. That's your deal. This is completely made out of recycled plastics. You have a 20-year warranty on this chair. EcoPoly, our buddies down there in Dodge County in Georgia. You want to help manufacturing in Georgia. You want to help, American jobs, Georgian jobs. EcoPoly is made in Georgia, period. Check that link out down below today. We're going to see how this thing shakes out, but I think looking backwards, we've got one college bowl game left. It's the most important one. Be curious to see the ratings for it, because I think all of the SEC will be watching this, and now you've actually looped in the Pacific Coast for once, for the first time since 14. So you could get a really, really, really big number, but we'll just see. The future is going to be dictated on who plays well when, and that wasn't always the case. That wasn't the case until this year, and now it's going to be the case of you better be ready to play in December. You better be ready to play in November, because by the time you get to Halloween, September is just not going to matter anymore. And look, y'all, this is the one year where September did matter, which was Texas's win over Alabama. Look, Alabama got the right win at the right moment, and their loss didn't matter. It didn't matter how bad they were in September, so long as they won the right game. And the truth of the matter is, and what Georgia fans need to do, is give Alabama credit for just winning and getting to the point where they survived at Auburn, and then they went on to upset Georgia by 3 points on 3 plays, basically. Alabama lost by 7, a score. Both of these are scores. And they lost by 1 play. So, the 1 play can matter. And you can argue Georgia lost by just 1 play. You could just say it was the fumble inside the 10. They lost by 3 points. Or you can pick the field goal. You can say any number of reasons why Alabama lost to Michigan. They were not the better team. Now, they were not the better team against Georgia, and they won. That is a significant accomplishment. So that's the part that Kirby... There's not the only team that is legitimately going to make a coherent argument that they are better than Georgia in terms of roster in the future is Alabama. And the caveat to that is they probably are not the best team going into 24 compared to Georgia. Probably not. The quarterback, Beck, is better. The defense... That, we'll see. But I think Georgia's offense is better than Alabama's versus Alabama's offense. You're going to lose Jermaine Burton for Alabama. He didn't do a lot, against in their loss to Michigan. But, he was their leading receiver for the year. So he's gone. I don't know where he'll be next year. I'm assuming he's gone. He played COVID. Jermaine could come back. But anyway, I don't know what his NFL prospects really are. But and then you've got always the rollover with players. Both programs are going to have to address that. But Alabama's class, their 23 class, it's really good, and you saw that with like Downs and other guys. They have a really hell on wheels 2023 class. Well, Georgia answered that in 24, and frankly, Georgia is the better team, okay? They lost the game. That can happen. Texas was way better than Oklahoma and lost. There's no explanation or excuse for that one. They lost the game on the final play of the game. So that's going to matter now, not in September. That Texas-Alabama game, there was too much put on that one game. The truth is there was too much put on that one game. And, the results speak for themselves. Texas has 2 losses now. Neither of them are to Alabama. Does that mean they're better than everybody else other than Alabama, Washington, and Michigan? No, it doesn't. It doesn't at all. They're clearly better than Florida State, or what's left of Florida State. So, Ohio State took a tumble. That was bad. That was bad. But that said, hey man, Missouri, This was a really good Missouri team. They were better than Ohio State, obviously. They were better than Florida State. They were better than Penn State. Missouri, I want to look at it because I don't know it off the top of my head, but Missouri should probably be number 6. I will look at it right now, but for Kirby, they're going to have to win these games in the future. The 21 game, there's all sorts of explanations as to what happened there and all that stuff. And that's great and everything in Atlanta talking about, but they were the better team and lost. You get to Indianapolis, I just think the pattern now is Kirby, they got to perform against Nick. It's not Alabama, it's Nick. And, Michigan's got as many wins over Bama as Georgia does this century. Texas, I don't know who, the LSU, not this century. That's wrong. But Kirby and Nick, But, I'm looking at it now. I know what's going to happen. You're going to have the top 4 will be in the 4, but, whatever. Georgia will be 5. Oregon will be 6. Mizzou will be 7. Ole Miss will be 8. And then after that, it will be probably, you're probably going to have 5 SEC teams. Well, then probably, you're going to have the Noles probably after the 2 SEC teams. So I would go top 4, then Georgia, Oregon at the 6. 7 would be Missouri. 8 would be Ole Miss. 9 will probably be Florida State. If those 2 are below Florida State, there's something wrong with it. 10, I have no idea. Arizona or LSU. It'll be one of the 2. It won't be Oklahoma. It certainly should not be Penn State, and I would say it should not be Ohio State either. But, this will be, coming into this thing next year, or this year, you're talking about an SEC that's going to be loaded up with a final poll that's going to have Texas, Alabama, Georgia, Mizzou, Ole Miss, and probably LSU in the top 10, if not the top 10, top 11. So that's 6 of the top 11 teams in one league. And in the Big Ten, you'll have Michigan, Washington, Ohio State, Penn State. I don't know if they're going to all be in the top 10. I would say 2 will probably be in the top 10. I don't know what's going to happen with Arizona, but, just looking at these things, you're going to have Tennessee in front of Clemson. Iowa's a joke. There's a lot of jokes. One of them is not playing in this league. And I think what Paul said, I kind of got off the subject there, is right. He said the Georgia game was an enigma. That's on Kirby Smart. We know they're one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the nation, and they may be the best, but they are never going to be able to prove it. Alabama was fortunate to be able to get to the college football playoff. All of that is correct. And by the way, the lesson, I wrote about this on New Year's on Dawg Post in Leggy's Thoughts. It's all there. You want to get motivated or whatever, all this fake stuff that, the lesson has to be that you got to play well when you got to play well. And you can't give away opportunities. Every play matters in all of these games. If the SEC championship didn't prove that, the Rose Bowl did, and if it didn't, the Sugar did. I have no idea what Washington was doing at the end of that game. The worst case scenario is you take a couple knees, and on the last 3rd and 9, you run the ball. Or you run the ball and take a couple knees, and you work that thing down to 12 seconds, and you punt that thing to Metairie. But that was really poor. That is Washington, though. That is UW. They have played with fire. They got kerosene just like throwing it up in the air and all this. That's who Washington is. And it almost cost them. Texas almost won that game for no apparent reason because they were not the better team. And they almost stole that thing. And they could beat Michigan. I think UW can too. Don't get me wrong. But one of these 2 needs to win it because I don't think they're winning anytime soon after this. So this isn't a situation where they're coming from an easy league like Clemson got the opportunity to do. This isn't a situation where we know the head coaches are going to be there in the future. If I'm Alabama, I'm going straight for that guy from UW to be my next head coach when Nick leaves. Now, Harbaugh's not going to be around. I mean, either he's going to be, he wasn't around half the year this year. Suspended 5 or 6 games, whatever. Who has a head coach suspended during the season? This is crazy. By the school, not just by the NCAA. So, I mean, Michigan men and the virtue of Michigan and the Big Ten's, facade. I don't get fired up about the athletics. I get fired up about the hypocrisy. It's hilarious to me. But Kirby and them, they got to close these out. And, I do not like Novak Djokovic. I think he's a clown on a lot of different levels. The way that he's acted over the years, not okay. But what he's done, and this is the opportunity Kirby and them have got. If you don't know who Novak Djokovic is, you can look him up. But his heyday came during Rafael Nadal and Roger Federer, the 2 greatest tennis players of all time. All due respect to Pete Sampras and I guess Rod Laver, but no. So, he came and he just couldn't get around him. And they're not going anywhere. You're going to have to go through them. Bama's not going anywhere. Georgia's going to have to go through them. And that's all there is to it.